What's up everyone, we're back at it with another react, and this time we are gonna watch Smash Bros newest prodigy, the Story of Jmook. I'll say Jmook, absolutely one of my favorite players to watch, maybe my favorite player even. And also a super nice guy. I got the chance to meet him at Genesis. Yeah, super nice, respectable competitor. So I'm interested to see this video. This isn't the newest video either, so this is not going to cover Genesis, but it's probably still going to cover a lot of interesting stuff. So let's check it out. Let's check it out.
It was more so just appreciating the game in a different perspective, because I feel like growing up I was pretty competitive in terms of video games, but to see that one of my favorite games also had that competitive side, I feel like that alone drove me to pursue the game. You know, I've kind of thought of this as a main hobby, you know, throughout my whole life. I've always like gravitated towards melee, towards competing, towards the value I get from like competing and going to tournaments has changed me for the better. And so I thought about it more so from my perspective, where it's like, I'm young, I still have a whole life ahead of me, and worst case scenario, if I don't like this, I'm spending a whole year traveling around the world playing my favorite video game, you know, for fun. I feel like a lot of people would, you know, want to do what I'm doing, and it's an amazing experience that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely, you know, an amazing perk. You get to travel the world, you get to make and meet a lot of friends all over the world as well, and you get to play a game you love. So, I mean, at least for a while, I think a lot of people would enjoy doing it if they, you know, of course, enjoy video games and competing.
Okay. Jmook interview, take one.
My name is Jake Dorado. I am 22 years old, and I'm a professional Melee player for FlyQuest. I remember I played a lot with my brother and my older brother and his friends. He always got his friends together to play Smash, and I was always the little brother of the group, just kind of, you know, do some like cheesy stuff here and there, trying to make them frustrated, which I found joy in. So Smash has always been a very like connecting game for me, connecting to people. You know, I started with my brother and his friends. It was about the time when the Smash Brothers documentary came out, and that was the first time where I really saw a glimpse of an entire layer. Like, this game that I knew my whole life has suddenly just a whole competitive layer that I had no idea about. That alone was enough motivation, and like I immediately pursued, you know, learning like the inner mechanics of the game and learning stuff. I was like, wow, like I played this game my whole life and I had no idea that L canceling existed. To see it underneath another layer is, you know, was really eye-opening for me. But yeah, it was more so the community, and realizing that I could find that through my own scene. Once I watched the doc, I immediately just looked into like, okay, where's the closest Smash scene from me? I wanna get involved. I wanna learn the game. I wanna learn who the best players are. I'm just here to learn. And it kind of drove me to go to my first tournament, which was in fall of 2014. I remember my family drove me up to, it was like an hour drive. It was just like a small local tournament for like an ultimate like frisbee like fundraiser. It was a very like small tournament, but I knew a lot of people there, and I remember going there and I immediately fell in love with it instantly. The tournament felt like a second home, where I was just so appreciative of realizing that there's so many different people, like different backgrounds, different ages, you know, all coming together just to appreciate one thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could already see a glimpse of what was about to come, right? But I also wanted to say, like, I mean, a lot of people have probably heard this over the years as well, but like, of course, Melee as a game have a lot of heroes, or whatever you want to call it, whether it's players, commentators, TOs. But honestly, arguably the biggest hero of them all is like, you know, this whole concept of making this Smash documentary. So Samox, the creator of both the Smash documentaries, but especially the first one, it just brought so many people into the community. And I think a lot of people that were not part of the Smash scene prior to the doc, it might be hard to understand like how big of a shift happened for the scene pretty much as soon as that documentary came out. Of course, stuff like Evo 2013 also sparked a lot of interest. They got like a lot more eyes. But the Smash documentary from Samox, arguably the most important move in Melee history. Arguably. So he deserves all the cred. Or at least a lot of cred. And it's cool to hear, you know, these type of players like Jmook, for example, like how the documentary was like such a big factor getting them into the game. It shows how much of an impact it truly had. I remember traveling a lot in 2014. It was a year I traveled a lot. I stayed in the States for like, I think it was like 2.5 months or something like that straight. And I traveled to like Australia, and it was like, it felt like, you know, more players than not, they started after the documentary, right? It felt like at the time it was probably like 75-80% sometimes. It was like, yeah, I started due to the documentary. I started due to the documentary. That's how I learned about Melee. That's how I learned about competitive Smash. It was actually crazy.
Sheik to me felt more in sync with what I wanted from the game, which is A, movement, and 2, being able to flexibly move around my opponent in a certain way that allows me to like get my hits while also staying free. I started Falco and Marth, kind of switched back and forth between those two. Marth had a lot of range, but it didn't feel like I was able to navigate or express myself fully. So I switched to Sheik for that purpose, and I've been using her ever since. One person that I was heavily inspired by was Kirby Kaze. To put Melee into words the way he did was really impressive. You know, PPMD, he did that at the time, but he was essentially that person for Sheik. His take on the character, and he expressed that through his words, through his gameplay. I really took inspiration from that early on.
Yeah, so the thing with Jmook is that like, I almost wish that players were stocks, because I feel like if Jmook was Bitcoin, I'd be retired, right? Anyone who's actually watched Jmook closely, like, could just tell. If it wasn't obvious, it's possible maybe you just haven't heard of him before, like weren't looking at like certain things or whatever, but like if you just watch Jmook even in his like older sets, it was just very clear he was gonna be a top player.
We were talking about this, me and Jake, before the interview. I was like, yeah, no, there was a tournament where you mollywopped me twice in a row. It was at like this comic book joint, and he just destroyed me.
Okay. Oh, that's it! Yeah, let's go! Great games.
It was supposed to be a free tournament for me. Like, it was in upstate New York. We were just traveling for, I think, like some college thing, and he just came out of nowhere, beat me, and I was so like angry about it that I was just like, I was trying to figure out what's the next tournament Jake's going to.
That's funny. And it also shows, like, you know, always, from the very get-go, all the way to today, there's always some players, you know, some people know about them, Tuesday, for example, in this scenario, but I mean, at least for me, I feel like a lot of people, they didn't really know much about Jmook whatsoever for a very, very long time. And I mean, the thing is, like, I don't even think it's like any disrespect or anything like that intended. It's just like there is a lot of players and there is a certain amount of like spotlight. So it's like not everyone can be in the spotlight simultaneously, right? So I mean, there are probably some players currently, like right now, that, you know, might be the next Jmook or the next Sane or the next whoever. But they're just, you know, not really getting like entirely as much attention as they possibly deserve. But yeah.
The first time I heard about Jmook, he has a famous, at least back home, a famous set against a Marth player where he just, to put it frankly, stunted on him. Like, it wasn't your classic Sheik gameplay. He was just so, I guess I want to say, like, energetic and innovative, and like the way he played. He was doing things that like no other Sheik has like ever done. There's a famous Twitch clip called Daddy of him just like 0-to-deathing the Marth on FD in a way I've never seen in my life. And I was like, oh, this guy's pretty good.
And that clip was just on Reddit and Twitter, and nobody had heard of this guy, like outside of New York. And he was hitting this huge, really cool Sheik combo that I'd never seen before in FD, and he beat the Moon in that set. So it was like a big upset for like an unknown player at the time. And he also wasn't from New York City, which was like an interesting part of it. Like, he was a player from upstate New York, which is a lot more alienated from like where a lot of the talent in New York typically is.
I remember I have a tweet from that time that said, Jmook is so fun to watch, holy shit. That was when I said this guy's like on my radar, because he made Sheik look cool, which I think for me particularly is a difficult thing to achieve, even though I'm trying to get better at appreciating all parts of the game.
A little bit of a fun fact, when I started the King of the Cube series, I was actually hanging out with Atrioc, who actually gave me the idea. And Atrioc was saying that the player he wanted to see on the first iteration of King of the Cube, he still hasn't been on King of the Cube yet, which might change by the time this comes out, but it was Jmook. Atrioc was a big Jmook fan, and this was like, you know, middle of 2021. Because like he was really flashy, right? He had a really cool style. He didn't go to many tournaments because he was busy with school, busy with his job, but he was definitely the sort of player that I think if you were like an aficionado, you kind of knew who he was. And, you know, IBW used to talk him up a lot, right? I mean, I think it's kind of funny because like people think of him as more new school, but he actually beat IBW at IBW's first ever tournament. So he's actually like more old school than IBW, at least, right?
Yeah, oh my, what a comeback by Jake.
Yeah, I mean, it's very cool that they share that, you know, like, road from the very start all the way to today. Very, very cool indeed. Especially seeing them in Grands at the last Genesis as well.
Bad by any stretch of the imagination at Smash World Tour, and he definitely had some like pretty impressive, I would say, highlights.
This is like one of his first few tournaments that he's gone to, like first big tournaments. That, again, that doesn't happen. No one really goes on runs. Maybe some people beat one person, or like maybe like even two people is like you should be happy about like leaving the tournament with. But when I saw that, I was like, yeah, it's over. He's gonna go on a tear. I don't know if you saw his Instagram, but he posted a very inspirational post about it. He was very happy about his run.
And then at Smash World Tour, I got to sit down and set up with him, and he just put me to sleep. It was a quick 3-0, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's pretty good. I kind of knew what I was getting into there, but even then I was like, this guy's extremely good, but the result didn't really speak to that in that way until like Genesis, right? And that's when it got crazy.
Genesis.
Yeah, I also gotta say, before we get into the next part, like one thing that always impresses me about Jmook as a player as well, like not like, of course, a lot of stuff in game impresses me, but out of game, like if you compare him to any other player, I feel like he has this composure, this sense of like being relaxed, so much more than any other player. And I mean, obviously, you know, when it comes to like clutch scenarios, stuff like that, extremely important to like, you know, have your head in the right space, mentally being there, and it's just a very impressive one. Like just looking at him, sometimes when I played, especially when you had like, you know, one screen or one TV you were sharing, people's body language and stuff could often be like a tell, for me at least, like how they were mentally feeling in the game, right? Even like, you know, slightly body adjustments could be a tell in terms of like how their mental state was, right? But someone like Jmook don't really seem to like do that, at least not when I've been watching. So I feel like that's a strong thing he has that probably is not talked about enough.
To me, felt like an anomaly. I mean, my last major was Smash World Tour, but before that was Super Smash Con 2017, which was almost 5 years ago. So to me, it was more so my chance to finally be in person, go to the event, like play against the best players in the world on CRT, where I mostly had a mini breakout like online for a little bit, but to me, it wasn't the same as actually being there in person and experiencing that for the first time in years.
Jmook at Genesis was unreal. I genuinely think it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing where someone who, at that perceived level, to reach that far into the biggest tournament, you know, of the year is, I can't understate how insane that was. And I'm sure everyone shares that sentiment who kind of has played this game for a long time, right? I couldn't attend Genesis because I had hurt my back, so I was just like laying on my floor watching TV, watching the stream, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. I was blown away. My roommate Aiden starts texting me. He plays Sheik. He hasn't talked to me in 4 days because he's been gone the whole time. He's like, Jmook is the only person that Nair's there. He's the only, just unsolicited. And I respond like, I know. It was crazy.
Is that maybe just beginner's luck, or is it like, no, he's a real deal? And like, you know, if you just look at his gameplay, like, you could tell it's not beginner's luck at all. He's just really good, and it's like this has never happened in Melee's history that just some rando that was like outside the top within 20. I don't know. He's like he was right outside the top 20 in Blur's top 100 rank, and then he just explodes out of nowhere to top 5, and it's like, huh, yeah, that's never happened in Melee's history. The scary thing is that he just might stay in top 5 rather than like, you know, maybe teeter outside of top 10.
Nice. Plup's gonna have to do the mango to put. Oh, that's it. Yep, the upset.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you can't see, like, maybe not to this degree, but sometimes when you see Cinderella stories, I mean, it's like, are they going to be able to keep this up? And I mean, for Jmook, partly, as we already talked about, composure, extremely good. And he's also like one of these players where you can really see how much he's trying to like learn matchups and stuff, tournament to tournament. I've talked about this before, but like sometimes when we've seen him play against, you know, various type of characters, and then next time you see him play against these same characters, and he's just like that much better at it. Yeah, no, extremely impressive player to say the least.
Yo, there it goes.
I think over the years, because I lived in a small region and I couldn't travel as much compared to other players, I had to make every single event count, you know, when I had the time. So when I do show up, I want to make sure I'm the best person I can be on that very day, on that given day. So I think it's the combination of good habits I've built over the years in terms of mental preparation for tournaments, and so that once I get there, I know that all I have to do is just play.
At Genesis, right, this was his first tournament back. There was a crowd of people with Jmook shirts. That's not an accident, right? Like a lot of people, I think, felt the way that I did, was just very inspired by him. Not all of them were Sheik mains, like myself really included, right? He's just a badass player. So it's just really cool to see that he's doing well.
Jmook went through Captain Falcon with none.
I am so impressed, Jmook!
Oh my
God!
The needle edge guards to keep Falcon off stage.
And Jmook soaking in the crowd a bit there. Who is
Lod's Peach. He had to play Plup and IBDW's like Fox. He had to go against Zane's Marth. Like, that's a true testament to a fantastic player, is someone who's able to like play so many different matchups and still like push through and win time after time after time in that bracket. Like, people have like hot days, and so it's really easy to just credit runs like that with like, oh, he was just having a hot day. But it was different, you know? Like, I think he was just able to tap into like a godlike mental state that like a lot, which he always like actually actively works towards, which just makes a lot of sense, right? Because we see the fruits of that labor constantly. So when people are like, yeah, like he's got a lot of pressure now, I was like, I don't really think he's gonna drop the bag here. Like he's worked way too hard to let this go.
Yeah, I also think like one thing that can be interesting to point out here. So from the second day at Genesis, right, we saw that Jmook had quite a few game 5s, right? He played against Plup game 5 and against Law game 5, right? But then a lot of the sets in top 8 against Nunn and Cody were incredibly impressive performances, right? And not really close, right? I'm not sure, I haven't talked to Jmook about this, but I wonder if it was like, you know, that you have already performed so good, so then if you make it to the top 8, like, you know, for the first time at that type of stage, that you almost have everything to win in a sense. You have already exceeded expectations. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying that a player of his caliber would be like, you know, all right, that's it, and just be like happy with losing. But sometimes if it's like, if you have performed a lot better than expected from a lot of people, I could imagine that a lot of players feel more relieved and more feeling like they have everything to win. It's like the pressure is on the opponent, right? So I wonder if that was part of the case, maybe. I don't know.
I'm sorry to Zane, who won Genesis, but I feel like Jmook's story kind of, in a lot of ways, not saved Genesis, but like really, really helped make that tournament hype, but also just this year of Smash, right? Like, I think Jmook doing really well really set the tone for like Melee's comeback in 2022.
It was very surreal to just like put myself in that chair and act like I have been there that whole time, because the truth is I was not expecting to make a run like that whatsoever. It felt what is it, like imposter syndrome? I think that's what they call it, where it's like all these people say you deserve to be here, but it's like it's only been like one event. It's been like one like breakout performance, and who knows if I'm even gonna be that person the next day, or hell, like even a year from now. So for me, I kind of displaced myself from the person that people thought like should get into Summit, you know. My biggest battle in Smash has been to overcome my self-doubt and to not exactly indulge in these moments of like insecurity where I feel like others deserve it more than I do. When at the end of the day, I'm at my best when I'm just like playing the game and enjoying every moment of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that is probably the case, what Jmook talked about there, for a lot of players. But getting that one run, sometimes that might be all you need, right? Like sometimes like you might have like a bunch of like tough losses in a row, many tournaments, but you get that one win or that one like insane performance, and sometimes that's all you need to like really start believing in yourself. Of course, how much you believe in yourself is extremely personal, but if you are like more of a person that like maybe struggle with self-doubt, I could imagine it's like even more important to get such a run to like really prove for yourself, to yourself, that you can do it, and then build from there.
He was at Summit pretty much immediately after Genesis, a couple weeks after. And I do think that probably a lot of people would have expected him to maybe not perform quite as well as he did at Genesis.
Some people would attribute that drop off, if it did happen, to pressure, which is more than understandable, right? You're coming second at Genesis and now you're at your next big event. I'm scared thinking about it. Thinking about it, I was getting like the sweats. I was so nervous for him.
So the thing with Jmook compared to Sheik players and other players in general is that he feels like a very complete player and just one who hits every criteria in every category. When certain players, they have like a really big run or whatever, maybe two, they get tested and you see weaknesses and they might slump for a little bit and then they'll catch up or whatever. With Jmook, I just don't really see that happening, at least not like, I don't see him falling too far below what we've seen in the last two tournaments.
Nice. All right. Okay. Falcon's get up attack is ridiculous.
Jmook does a crazy tilts.
Oh, this is really rough now.
Jmook's ability to bring that back. That's his jump.
It feels like to me that...
Yeah, it's looking over. Yeah. Wow, and that is just resolve from Jmook there. Just so cool, calm, and collected. Went down 2-0.
Yeah, here they come.
He's got to do it.
Here they come. He is not stopping.
Oh, no, he's joining it.
Let's go! Let's go!
He has the micro stuff, right? He will go for these super specific, situational, ultra SDI, weird recovery things that will like lead into a 50-50 when normally like other Sheik players or whoever would just die and he will get a stock off of it. He has really good macro sense. He will get these just like really brilliant up tilt timings that will just lead into a stock.
Because he was in my pool. He went to game 5 with I think everyone. He went to game 5 with myself, Mech, and Mango in the pool as well. The only one he lost to was, I guess, Mango.
Is this the 3-0 comeback? Have you nailed this?
Nah, he's still in. He's still in.
Oh, he's still in?
Yeah.
Why did he do it? Oh my god, that's actually crazy.
Yeah.
He's still living.
Back air again.
No, okay, no, he just didn't want to do it.
I
know. Oh, the pop-up? That's a well-earned pop-up.
He almost beat Mango. I mean, he really... he had Mango like right on the brink. I mean, that was one of the closest sets I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, as we said earlier, like this is not the most like recent video as well. And I mean, we have seen Jmook perform extremely well at many tournaments. A lot of tournaments that have been, you know, past the release of this video. I mean, Genesis in particular, right? Winning Genesis. And I mean, we've seen that he's able to like, you know, take sets of everyone. I mean, of course, moving forward, like, of course, he's going to try to improve, get better at the game and stuff like that. But there are some players, you know, showing a little bit more of like an issue to him. And like, I would say a little bit of it is like, you know, the reason maybe some Sheik players have tried to have a secondary in the past. You know, H-Box being an issue, Ice Climbers being tough as well. But I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see like how he's going to handle these matchups, right? Because he does have recent losses against both Puff and ICs. And I would say these are the two matchups historically primarily Sheik players have swapped character for. I don't think we're at a stage where it's like, oh, he's gonna like play a different character anytime soon, but who knows? Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Time will tell, right?
Being able to actually do the tech chase perfectly is pretty cool. Like, it's people who are not well versed in the game maybe don't think it's tech chasing is the most exciting thing, especially if it became like standard and everybody hit it all the time. But seeing somebody finally do it that well is incredible because it's so difficult. It's so hard. Him being able to do that for one, I think is crazy. Like just being able to convert any grab into a stock.
Nice.
Perfect.
I think the other thing that makes him really interesting and cool is the way he uses reverse aerials. He's able to incorporate reverse fair and which is a pretty small hitbox into his combos in such a cool fucking way. And then also he adds in nair and up air in a lot of places that I don't see any other Sheik added into. Like he'll just extend combos in really, really interesting ways with like the tip of his feet, with moves where a lot of people would choose to try and like tilt or fair to try and extend or end the combo just because like that's enough damage, like this is the only thing I can secure. But he'll find a way to like squeak in one of those other aerials to just keep it going that isn't down air. I've noticed, like, not that he doesn't down air, but I think a lot of Sheiks have used down air to like continue their combos in like interesting and cool ways, but he's using nair and up air in interesting, cool ways, and I really, really like that. The other thing is definitely his edge guarding. His edge guarding with needles and the way he like reads people off the edge is so incredible. Like watching the way he converts stocks off stage is so unique to him, and the way he squeaks in needles or finds a way to convert stocks in ways that a lot of other Sheiks would allow like a Fox or Falco to tech on the stage.
Yes, oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, like, knowing when to use Nair over Fair in many scenarios can make a huge difference. And also, like, his punish game in Melee is, like, so interesting and so cool. Like, partially what was talked about, you know, like, reverse hits, weak hits. There's just so many, like, layers. And then, of course, like, the player that needs to, like, try to defend himself with DIs and stuff, there's just, like, countless different combinations that could be done. Jmook obviously being fantastic at it. And then talking about the tech chase, like probably for a lot of spectators, it's like, you know, it looks basic, it looks maybe even boring. But what was talked about, how hard it is. Honestly, I think of the top characters, Sheik arguably has the hardest punish game against bases, if you were to ask me. It might not look the hardest, but consistently pulling off like down throw, reaction, tech chase, it is extremely tough. And I think like, yeah, arguably any other top character has an easier punish game. So like even Jmook on like bad days, you can see that the tech chases are quite significantly a drop from his good days. And that's just a testament to how hard the down throw tech chase actually is.
Goodness. Down there. Dynasty! That's game!
He finds ways to like kind of maneuver his way in like these small spots to make sure he hits them cleanly so there's no opportunity to attack and the edge guard's just over. And I really, really like that about him.
Yeah, I low-key favor Leffen. I would definitely favor Leffen in this scenario.
This is what you wanted, Phil.
Yeah, this is it. I need some sloppy.
Oh,
what?
ASD down tech.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
He's really going to KO off
no,
the
That's it! Jmook beats Leffen!
Dude, what a clutch ASDI down tech off the up smash. That was wild.
I think it's hard when someone has a great performance and then has an immediately following tournament. And Jmook himself had said, hey, don't expect too much from me, because this happens sometimes. It usually doesn't happen on this level where like you get second in Genesis, but you do really well, and then you go into the next tournament or couple ones, and it doesn't really, you don't achieve that same level. It's very common. It happens all the time. And Jmook was aware of this. The idea of winning not being forever, especially in a competitive environment where there's always next year, there's always another Super Bowl. It is going to be super interesting to see how this flash in the pan, this amazing anomaly of a person continues you know, will it last, basically.
Did you have any doubts in it when he was playing against Zane again?
No. I felt worried about Zane on the run back, honestly, because I know Jmook. I know how he is as a player. He's someone that just grows over time. So if you can beat him before, you're probably gonna lose it next time.
It felt like it was a very different day from Genesis, and that I had a lot more time to collect myself. Because at Genesis, it was like, oh my God, I'm playing against the best player in the world, you know? So there was kind of like, I kind of made an excuse for myself where it's like, if I lose, so what? He's the best player in the world. Like he's still like up here and everyone else is down here. Meanwhile at Summit, it was like, oh, this is just a person who also gets nervous, you know? And so I saw it more as just another Melee player rather than thinking about the gravity of who I was playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very, very important aspect as well. I think most competitors at some point in their, you know, career could feel that. I know for me, like my lesson learned was Ross 4, which was like a very big tournament, relatively speaking, at the time. When I played against European AMSA, he was the best player in Europe and probably among the very best players in the world as well, even though Europe and the US hadn't really like tested the waters against each other. And I was basically like similar type of mindset as Jmook had versus Zane. And then it was like, for me, it was actually very close that time against AMSA. And it was like game 5, last hit. And I actually had the lead 1-0, 2-1. And that's when I realized that, you know, you should never give a player too much respect, right? Sure, sometimes a player might be better than you. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're still human, right? As Jmook said, like, it's also another player. They can also get nervous and so on, right? Like, no player, no matter how good they are truly unbeatable, right? So sometimes that one time, that's what you need, right? To truly, like, understand, like, that this player is also beatable just like anyone else.
Saw he was playing Zane next, and both me and Atriod looked at each other, and I was like, I don't think he's winning this one. It's like, this is where the road stops at this tournament. I didn't believe he could do it yet. I definitely believed he could do it down the road, but I didn't think he could do it so soon after Genesis because Zane won so solidly at Genesis. I went upstairs because my girlfriend called me and I was on the phone with her and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on this call. I'm just gonna talk to her and I'll come back. And I look back at my computer screen at like the end of game 5 and I'm like, holy shit, it's happening. And I run down the stairs like a kid on Christmas to Atriok. I'm like, he fucking did it. He fucking did it. Like,
I don't know if he's gonna come back. Yeah.
Oh!
He's not dead. He's not dead.
He's dead.
Now he is. Well played. What an adjustment from Genesis.
Right? Huge adjustment.
Yeah, he was dominant in that match.
It's happened so consistently. Like,
yeah, I mean, I bet it was a lot more to it than that, but mentality was probably like one of the key factors here, right? If you compare like Jmook's view going into Genesis versus the view here. I mean, again, Same probably played better at Genesis. Jmook probably played better here relative to like, you know, their head-to-head sets, not talking about the runs in general. But mentality also like super, super important, like believing that you can do it. So sometimes you can see that in like, you know, great players being more prone to make like massive comebacks, reverse 3-0s, or even like, you know, being down a lot in one particular game. A lot of it is also like mentality, believing in yourself, knowing you can do it.
every time I have an expectation, it's like, he can't be quite there yet. And then he just gets that win or does it anyway. And I think that's what's so impressive about Jmook so far is his performances and his level of improvement. As much as you could hope out of a Melee player, he seems to exceed it somehow at every turn. And I think that's really incredible.
His immaculate tech chasing, so consistent. He's good at other matchups like Marth. I mean, he's beating me and Zane now, so it's like, I knew that like he was a very likely candidate like a month in advance, where like my general manager was like, yeah, we're thinking of picking up a second melee player, and like, who would you recommend out of all of them? And it's like, you need to pick up Jmook right now. It's like, if you don't pick him up, like, he's probably gonna improve more. You gotta scoop him right now.
They reached out to me after Summit. They contacted me, and here I am. It's a very surreal experience to be wearing a jersey and representing an organization, you know, just because they want to see me play the game, you know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him pop off, and because like everybody has a question. It's like, dude, Jmook, second at Genesis, fourth at Summit, and it's like, damn.
It felt more like a vision, like the near future. I would not have thought that it would be in 2022. I'd be sponsored by an organization for just playing Melee. A 14-year-old Jmook would not be, you know, picturing this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone at that age would. But I mean, it's cool that he got picked up pretty quickly, right? Sometimes in Smash, takes too long. But I mean, of course, you know, the economical situations, orgs, players, not always the easiest balance, and especially now with like the economy being the way it is in general. But it's cool to see that he actually did get picked up like relatively quickly after he was like breaking out at the biggest stage.
Most for this tournament is pretty much just playing as many people as possible. Despite my two performances, there are still top players that I haven't gotten the chance to play with at all. You know, so I'm hoping to squeeze out as much potential out of this tournament as much as I can. You know, perform and, you know, represent Team FlyQuest, play my best, and, you know, let's see what happens.
So there is some question marks though. Like, there's some of his spreads that are good, and now it's time to see if Jmook's also good at like the rest of his spread, because like every top player has holes. No matter how good they are, they have holes. The question we have for Jmook is, how good is he versus Jigglypuff, more specifically H-God?
When I'm thinking about players that might give Jmook some trouble, Hungrybox definitely comes to mind, and I just think that a couple things are going on there. H-Box has always been incredibly good versus Sheik. It's just a pretty good matchup for Puff. It's a matchup where when you have to be onto the stage as Sheik, you're probably going to eat a rest unless you're like very doing a very particular like mix-up or something very tricky. On the flip side, of course, like Sheik can't really edge guard Puff that same way, obviously. Puff just does too many jumps. I know that they've had close sets online, but I do know that Hungrybox is up. I do think, however, that Jmook can figure it out. What Sheik needs to do in that matchup is be very mobile, use the platforms to kind of circumvent the fact that Sheik doesn't have the best aerial mobility unless she's wave landing. And fortunately, I do think that Jmook is the kind of player who has that tech skill. I think he's going to be able to figure it out, but I do kind of expect, I hope I eat my words on this, but I do kind of expect that Jmook is going to have some trouble with H-Box at first.
We're in game one, Jmook versus H-Box. Yeah, there's that crouch I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, now it's been a while since this came out, but I think we talked about this pretty recently. I think someone said the other day that it was like 11-1 in sets to H-Box, something along these lines. Maybe I'm off by like a set or two, but a very, very significant winning record, right? So, I mean, compared to every other top player, that is Jmook's by far worse record head-to-head against a different player, right? So I mean, looking at it now today, that is a matchup he will need to improve more at, right? He lost to H-Box as recently as CEO, which was, you know, just a few days ago. I didn't catch that set myself, so I can't really say like in terms of like how well I think either of them played or anything like that. But I mean, yeah, that's a devastating record. And a little bit of the weakness we've seen from Sheik historically, and why a lot of the Sheik players have had secondaries, right? For Puff and ICs in particular. So once again, I'm interested to see like what Jmook's plan is going to be moving forward.
It's not just for the crouching under the grab. There's just so many different micro interactions where you need to be aware of it. Covered as well with the roll up and then dash attacks. This, I believe, will do it. Rest covers it. We're going to game two.
Fearing, I think, the immediate crouch off of a whip from H-Box. Wow, really good conversion right there. Jmook with the lead early on.
Trying to entire set. Dash attack, a move that we see so often in other matchups, but not in this one. And it takes a lot of control to not just whip it out every time.
Strong hit opener, and Jmook is nickel and diming him across the stage.
Oh my god.
He just DI's that one out. Jmook with the set lead right now.
Breaking them apart.
Okay, we're going to game 5. Ladies and gentlemen, HBox with a solid lead on that one.
And there is the lead that Hungrybox wants. That Jmook can confirm the kill here, and HBox is not giving it to him. He knows what he wants, and he's just defending brilliantly.
Yeah, just playing so careful right now. We are approaching percent where, oh no, you hate to see it.
Yeah, you really do hate to see that. People taking SDs.
Grab.
But HBox has such a strong record in the matchup. And I mean, it's not only due to the fact that Puff is, at least in my opinion, favored in the matchup, but he also has so much experience against so many Sheik players over the years. So I mean, you gotta give cred for that as well.
Amsa, you know, he made his name in the scene, beating people like Mewtwo King, that's right, at the time, Sheik. He set against HBox. Jmook played kind of shaky at the beginning.
Egg Toss is going to force the recovery to get a little bit weird. Strong hit in the right direction for the Nair, and that's probably going to do it.
Yeah. Amsa very happy with that win, obviously.
Jeez, the scraps between these two.
Yeah, they are absolutely duking it out. That is... Actually,
that one will.
Yeah, that will.
All right, advantage Jmook has to hold on to it.
I really like the way he played that situation, though. Really slow on the get-up. Beautiful Amsa tag. Oh, but Amsa gets to ledge anyway so quickly, and he's going to take the stock and the second game. What an uphill, you know, challenge for Jmook.
All right, game 3 counterpick going over to Pokemon Stadium. See if the change of scenery, removal of that top platform might be enough to help Jmook out. Oh, that got weird. Okay.
Got really weird.
Opportunity for Jmook. How far can he take it? The shield drop up here, not quite enough to do it. Next one will probably kill, though.
That's it. Amsa clutching it out against Jmook, one of the quickest rising players in the game.
Yeah, I mean, this is also like another player-to-player matchup where we have seen Jmook lose quite a few times at least. But unlike Hungrybox, at least I feel like here, one advantage, I mean, not only that Cheek is better against Yoshi than compared to Puff, but also the fact that at least here, there is another player to look at, right? Plop historically has been very good against Yoshi, at least as far as I've seen. And I think they also had like some first to, yeah, like a very high number at the very least, and Plop won very convincingly against Amsa. So having that like another player, even if you have, you know, your own strengths, your own weaknesses as players, overall and in matchups, it's always like favorable to have like inspiration, ideas to like, you know, take from other players more or less. So that's something he absolutely could and probably already have tried to use to his advantage. But yeah, we probably will see more moving forward as well.
Overall, it was more or less how I normally play. I wasn't playing exceptionally well. I wasn't playing, you know, terrible. So it was like a solid medium, kind of like understanding like how I normally play on average, and especially playing in front of the crowd, because, you know, Genesis was, although it was in front of large crowds when my first times performing in front of the crowd, this was like kind of like an insight into how I will be performing under pressure. You know, I have to understand that that I won't exactly be, you know, having these crazy runs. Like, you know, it's kind of like good way to like put myself in my place, and obviously like Amsa, you know, knocked me out. I'm happy I didn't get upset. There were a lot of upsets this tournament, so I'm happy that I at least got to make it this far. You know, to be seeded third, and also my first time, you know, being sponsored. You know, there's a lot of expectations, you know, like coming into this event. So I'm glad that didn't really get the better of me, and I was able to, you know, not exactly interact with those like thoughts of self-doubt and, you know, can I actually do I actually deserve this? Can I actually like, hang with the top players? Honestly, I don't have too much practice against like Luigi versus Yoshi. So those matches in particular, I was very like concerned about. So it was more so like against Luigi, for instance, Eddie Mexico, he's great versus Sheik. I don't have as much Luigi experience, so for me, I'm proud of myself for being able to like overcome that, like, on the big stage. And then like HBox, we've had a lot of like online sets. That was our first like set, like IRL set. I'm just happy that even when I'm not playing my best, I can still like, my B game or my 6 or 7 out of 10 can still get me to where I want to go. Loved it. It's a great experience. Great experience. I mean, Vancouver is amazing. I have yet to, come this far west of Canada, so it's been, great experience. Get to meet everyone. Also, my first time being sponsored. FlyQuest. So overall, I'm like, pretty content with how things went. So right now it's looking like Gamel.
And you can already see like the stage lending itself a little bit better to how Jmook wants to approach this. Because Joshman can't do as many lasers as staying back as he was doing in the previous one. 3 needles? No way!
Yeah, needles. Arguably coolest move in the game. I always say that.
Oh, and he gets the counter. Zane is playing out of his mind right now. Okay. And Jmook. So, HBox is your Gamel 2022 champion.
Gamel in Toronto, and then afterwards it's kind of up in the air. Overall this summer I'm just looking to travel.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't Grant, but I just gotta say that I think Jmook Sane, that's arguably my favorite rivalry. I feel like they always have game 5s, they always have like such interesting sets. So if there is any given like, massive tournament, that's the one set I hope we get to see.
As much as I can, I have the sponsorship, I have nothing else to do, I quit my job, I'm out of school, so there's no reason for me not to just travel the world and go to
Oh no, won't be last Summit. Poor Summit, we missed them. They did so much for us over the years. Of course, sad to see them go.
As much as I can. I just want to thank all of my fans, all of you at home, my friends, my family, everyone who knows that I can do this, and I just want to say I'm very thankful for you guys. For me to be here, to be traveling around the world, to play my favorite video game for a living is it's the dream, I'm very excited that I have this opportunity, and I just want to thank all of you for cheering me on despite my doubts. Yeah, I guess I just want to give a shout out to all my friends and family over the years. You know who you are, my friends and family. I've saw, everything, even when I was like 14 or 15, realizing that this is something that I've, really wanted to do, to really, push myself and, be in this chair right now. To my friends, to my mom, my brother, my dad, all my close friends, my closest friends who I've met through Smash, at my first tournament, I want to give a shout out to them, and, I love you all.
Alright, that seems to be it. Yeah, no, interesting video, absolutely. Cool to, get a little bit more insight to his whole arc. I guess my final question to you all would be, what is your favorite Jmook set of all time? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. See you all next time. Peace.